Rain pelted the windshield like an angry drummer as I turned into the familiar, half-cracked pavement of the plaza parking lot. My headlights cut through the misty early morning gloom, bouncing off puddles that shimmered like oil-slicked mirrors. The wipers screeched, more irritated than effective, as I pulled into my usual spot, third from the bookstore entrance, right under the flickering security light that had needed replacing for 2 years. I killed the engine and sat in silence. For a moment, my head throbbed from too little sleep, my scrubs were damp from a spilled coffee during the night shift, and my feet ached in ways I didn't think were physically possible. Working double shifts at the hospital and managing the little bookstore. My grandfather left me wasn't exactly the dream life, but it was mine. Hard-earned, honest, and quiet. At least, it used to be. The second I stepped out of my car, the door creaked open against the wet wind. And that's when I heard it. A sharp rap, like someone knocking with authority they hadn't earned. I turned. Xiao was standing next to my car with the theatrical impatience of someone used to being obeyed. Blonde bob helmeted under a plastic rain visor, oversized sunglasses despite the cloud cover, and a velour tracksuit that somehow screamed both wealth and desperation. Her hand was still poised mid-air, ready to knock again. "You can't park here," she barked before I even closed my door. I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "This spot's reserved." "HOA parking only," she said, motioning to a laminated sheet taped hastily to a cone beside her Lexus. "This is private property." I glanced around. There were no signs, no markings. The lot was wide open and half empty. "I've been parking here for years. I run the bookstore," I said, nodding toward the small shop with the navy awning, its closed sign still swaying in the breeze. She crossed her arms. "Doesn't matter. I'm Karen Holbrook. I coordinate property compliance for the HOA. This lot is under our jurisdiction now, and your car is unauthorized." I stared at her, trying to process the absurdity. The plaza had always been a strange patchwork of ownerships and leases, but never once had anyone from an HOA said anything about parking, and certainly not with this level of aggressive theater. "Karen, Ms. Holbrook," she snapped. "Right, Ms. Holbrook. I think there's a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. I already took a photo of your license plate. I'll be reporting you. If you don't move your vehicle within the next 10 minutes, it will be towed." A cold, dull anger stirred in my chest. I'd had too little sleep to deal with this nonsense. "I own that shop. I've been parking here longer than— Then consider this your first and only warning," she interrupted, already pulling out her phone. "You can't just claim space. Rules are rules." She took a picture with a theatrical flourish, then turned and stomped back toward her car, phone still raised like a badge of authority. The sound of her heels clicking on wet pavement somehow made the morning feel even colder. I stood there, watching her slide into her seat and dramatically pretend to jot notes on a clipboard. I half laughed in disbelief, then shook my head and walked into my store. The bell above the door gave its usual cheer as I stepped inside, but the warm scent of old paper and lemon oil didn't soothe me the way it usually did. I went about opening the shop, flipping switches, setting the register, trying to put Karen Holbrook out of my mind, but her voice kept echoing in my head. Unauthorized. Towed. Jurisdiction. Around noon, my friend Marco stopped by for a coffee and comic trade. "You look like you fought a lawnmower and lost," he said, setting down a stack of graphic novels. "I got Karen'd. Say no more." He winced. "HOA Karen or parking Karen?" "Same Karen. She's claiming the lot now. Said I'm not allowed to park in front of my own shop." Marco blinked. That's not even an HOA lot. Pretty sure half of it's still privately held. Didn't your grandfather keep some deed papers? Probably in a box somewhere under my bed, I muttered, half joking. Maybe you should check. Sounds like this chick is starting a turf war. We shared a laugh, but the unease lingered. Something about Karen's confidence, her complete assurance that she could just take control, rubbed me raw. It wasn't just rude, it was calculated. The next morning, the rain had cleared. Sunlight glared off the wet asphalt, and birds chirped with the smugness of creatures who never had to worry about parking enforcement. Then I saw it. A bright yellow boot clamped on my car's front tire like a bear trap. A towing notice flapped. In the breeze, half soaked but unmistakable. I rushed over and yanked it off. Violation. Vehicle subject to removal. By order of Homie Hands trembled with fury. She actually did it. I called the number listed. A bored voice on the other end told me the boot would only come off if I paid a removal fee and agreed not to park again. I own the damn shop, I snapped. Talk to the HOA, he said, and hung up. I stormed over to the local HOA office. It was a prefab trailer on the other side of the complex. Inside, an overwhelmed receptionist blinked at me as I waved the violation notice in her face. I didn't authorize this, she said after skimming it. Karen's just a volunteer. She's not even on the board. Then how is she ordering? Boots on cars? She gets involved. Loudly. So, what happens now? We'll look into it. I left feeling like I'd just been patted on the head and sent to time out. Meanwhile, Karen was holding a little HOA court in the parking lot, clipboarding every tenant's vehicle, issuing warnings, and telling passers-by she was cleaning up the plaza. I watched from the window as she pointed at my shop, then whispered something to a woman walking her dog. The woman laughed. Laughed! That laugh dug deeper than any insult. I stood behind the counter, seething, heart pounding with frustration and disbelief. This wasn't over. Not even close. Karen thought she'd won. Thought a clipboard and a bad attitude made her queen of the asphalt. She had no idea what was buried under that cracked pavement, or who actually owned the ground she was stomping on. And suddenly, I remembered the box under my bed. By the time the weekend rolled around, I'd put together a plan sharp enough to draw blood. And it didn't involve screaming matches or signs of my own. No, I was going to let Karen hoist herself with her own clipboard. I started by doing exactly what she expected. Nothing. I parked in the same spot Monday morning, and Tuesday, and Wednesday. I ignored the laminated warnings she stuck under my wipers and smiled when she scowled at me from across the lot. Then I made one simple phone call to a local attorney, one who had dealt with property disputes for decades. Mr. Redmond had a voice, like gravel, and a laugh that sounded like someone shifting gears. "You've got her by the throat and she doesn't even know it," he said, chuckling as he flipped through the documents I'd emailed him. "She's booted my car. Threatened to tow customers. She's claiming authority she doesn't have." He snorted. Classic HOA delusion. They get a badge and think it's the Constitution. Can I sue her? Technically, yes, but that's not what you want to do. You want to make it public. You want to make it so loud even the HOA board can't ignore it. That's when the idea clicked. If Karen loved attention, I was going to make sure she got plenty, just not the kind she was used to. I started collecting statements from other tenants. Tony gave me a written account of her fake violations. The retail owner of the donut shop provided security footage of her planting signs after hours. Even customers began chiming in. One woman forwarded an email where Karen accused her of supporting illicit commerce for shopping at my store. By the end of the week, I had a digital binder full of petty tyrannies, more than enough. And then I created a website. Simple layout, black text, white background. I titled it, "Who Owns the Parking Lot?" Right at the top, I embedded a high-res scan of the deed showing my name. Below that, I laid out the timeline. Karen's harassment, her booting my car, the false claims, and her public posts. I embedded photos, videos, emails, everything, all meticulously verified and legally clean. At the bottom was a short video I recorded with Marco's help. Just me standing in front of my store, holding the deed and explaining calmly that the parking lot belonged to me, not the HOA, not the city. Me. I published it late Friday night. Quietly. No announcement. No fanfare. Saturday morning, the fireworks began. It started with a trickle, 2 or 3 comments on Karen's Facebook post from neighbors linking the site. By noon, the post had over 60 comments. Then the HOA's main Facebook group, normally a sleepy thread of dog pictures and trash complaints, erupted into a full-on war. Some defended Karen, insisting she was trying to bring order. Others demanded to know why she was targeting a long-standing small business. But everyone was talking about the website. By the afternoon, I received an email from the HOA president, a man named Warren, politely requesting a meeting to discuss recent developments. I declined. Instead, I printed out the website contents and hand-delivered them, along with a cease and desist letter prepared by Mr. Redmond to Karen's door. She opened it, wearing a silk robe, her makeup half done, and an expression that twitched between confusion and contempt. "You've been served," I said simply, holding the envelope out. She didn't take it. "What is this?" "A notice informing you that you are no longer permitted to step foot on the parking lot you've been illegally managing, including the spot in front of your Lexus." "Excuse me? You're trespassing, Karen. And from this point forward, any further action you take on my property will result in legal consequences." She stared at me, then down at the envelope like it might explode. "This is a joke," she hissed. "No, joke. I own the lot. And now? Everyone knows it." I turned and walked away before she could gather a reply. That night, my phone buzzed non-stop. The website had gone viral. Locally, at least. Someone posted it to the town subreddit. A few schoolers turned it into a TikTok audio meme. By Sunday evening, a satirical YouTube channel with 10K subscribers had done a dramatic reading of the deed with Karen's Facebook posts flashing on screen. The icing on the cake? Someone updated her HOA wiki page to include illegally attempted to claim private parking lot. Failed spectacularly, but I wasn't done yet. Monday morning, I parked in my usual spot and waited. 10 minutes later, Karen appeared, marching across the lot like a woman going to war. She was flanked by 2 HOA board members, Warren and a woman I recognized from the bakery. I stepped outside just as they approached. "Mr. Langford," Warren began, his voice measured, "we'd like to apologize for recent misunderstandings and confirm the HOA will no longer interfere with parking adjacent to your store." "I appreciate that," I said calmly. Karen opened her mouth, but Warren cut her off with a hand. "We'd also like to ask if you'd be willing to remove the website. It's drawn a lot of attention." I smiled. "Maybe, but only if Karen issues a public apology and retracts every warning and violation she issued." Karen turned red. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," I replied. "You humiliated me, booted my car, scared off customers, and tried to pretend you owned my land. The least you can do is admit it publicly." She looked to Warren for backup, but his silence was all the answer she needed. "This is absurd," she hissed. "No," I said. "What's absurd is someone thinking a clipboard gives them control over people's lives." Karen stormed off. Warren nodded once. "We'll be in touch." As they walked away, I leaned against the hood of my car and let the moment soak in. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace, not just from winning, but from doing it the right way. Karen had underestimated me. She thought I was just another business owner she could bully into silence. But now she knew exactly who owned the lot. And soon, everyone else would too. The yellow boot stayed on my car for 3 full days. Every morning, I walked past it on my way into the shop. An ugly reminder that Karen wasn't just a nuisance, she was dangerous. Customers started to ask questions. A few even turned around when they saw the boot, probably assuming my store was on the verge of foreclosure. Karen had done more damage to my business in a week than the pandemic ever did. On the 4th day, I paid the removal fee. The man who came to take the boot off, same voice from the phone, gave me a disinterested shrug when I told him it was unjust. She filed the report. "Our hands are tied." "She's not even on the board," I said, shoving the receipt into my jacket pocket. He didn't even blink. "Still has the badge, still signs the forms. That's all we need." I watched him drive away, mud kicking up behind his truck, then stared at the streaks his tires left behind. "That's all we need." The phrase rang in my ears. Apparently, all Karen needed was the appearance of power to wield it like a sword. I took pictures of the boot, the receipt, even the so-called violation form. I emailed the HOA office twice, called once, and never got a real response. Just a canned auto-reply and one voicemail saying they'd investigate further. The woman I'd spoken to before, Nicole, wasn't even picking up anymore. Meanwhile, Karen's reign escalated. She started walking the lot every afternoon, wearing a bright yellow vest that looked like it had been stolen from a crossing guard. She planted fake permit parking only signs into the grass bordering the plaza and taped more printed notices to the lampposts. She handed out warning slips to cars parked too long and left scolding notes on windshields in pink gel pen. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so effective. People started avoiding the area. Even the neighboring barbershop owner, Tony, who had been there for 15 years, told me he'd had enough. She slapped a violation on my truck. Man, I was inside cutting a kid's hair. Said I was over the time limit. "There's no time limit," I growled. Tony nodded solemnly. "Doesn't matter if people believe there is." And that was the root of it. Perception. She was crafting a reality through sheer audacity. People didn't check the facts. They just saw the vest, the clipboard, the signs, and they obeyed. I stopped sleeping. I kept replaying her smug expression every time I passed her in the lot. She'd smile without smiling, like she knew she'd won. Her posts on the neighborhood Facebook page started getting bolder, too. Screenshots flooded my inbox, sent by neighbors who thought I should see them. "Local shop owner continues to ignore posted rules," one read. Another accused me of attempting to destabilize HOA safety protocols. She even posted a blurry photo of my car and called it an abandoned vehicle. "Abandoned," I muttered out loud in the shop, waving the screenshot at no one. "It's parked in front of my store." That night, after closing, I sat on my bed, shoulders slumped, feet aching. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Even my cat avoided me, probably sensing I was one bad headline away from snapping. And then I remembered Marco's joke. The deed papers. I dragged the dusty storage bin out from under my bed and hauled it onto the floor. Inside were layers of yellowed papers, old utility bills, blueprints with brittle corners, and finally, a leather-bound folder labeled Langford Development Co. My grandfather's name was on nearly every page. I started reading. The documents dated back decades, outlining purchase agreements and ownership maps from when the plaza was first built. It took me hours, but buried near the back, under a curled index sheet, was the gem. Plot 9A. Parking lot strip adjacent to units 1 to 12. Retained under personal ownership. See Section 5. I sat up straighter. Plot 9A. That was the parking lot. My grandfather had never sold it when he leased out the storefronts. The lot had never been transferred to the HOA, never incorporated into their domain. I kept flipping, my heart pounding. Now, Section 5 confirmed it. Ownership had passed to my father, then to me upon his death. The document was notarized, sealed. The parking lot wasn't public property. It wasn't HOA property. It was mine. My fingers trembled as I placed the papers on the table, smoothing them out like ancient treasure maps. My exhaustion evaporated, replaced by something hotter, righteous fury. Karen had booted me off my own land. Suddenly, the injustice of the past week clicked into perfect clarity. The threats, the boot, the humiliation, all of it was illegal. More than that, it was personal. I stayed up the rest of the night scanning every document, labeling the files, organizing them into folders. I made digital backups, printed copies, even emailed myself a locked PDF. In the morning, I marched to the county clerk's office to confirm the records. A bored woman in a cardigan took one look at my paperwork and nodded. Yep, this is still valid. Plot 9A's registered under your name. No HOA liens or easements on file. She slid the papers back to me, unbothered. Why do you ask? I smiled, a slow, dangerous grin. Because I've got a trespasser. When I left the building, I didn't walk. I strode. The sky was clear, the sun high. For the first time in days, I felt lighter. Karen had pulled the wrong leash, and now I had the chain. She thought she could bully me with fake signs and a clipboard. She didn't know she'd been stomping around on land I owned, and if she wanted a battle over parking rights, well, I was about to give her a war she couldn't win. But I wouldn't charge in. Fists raised? No, that would be too easy. She'd built her little empire on public image, empty authority, and petty cruelty. I had facts, law, and patience. Now all I needed was a plan. The morning air was crisp as I unlocked the store the day after the confrontation, and something in the air felt final, like the last page of a book that had been left open too long. Tony leaned against the doorway of his barber shop, sipping coffee, from a mug that said, "World's Okayest Boss," and raised an eyebrow as I waved, "She came by last night," he said. I paused halfway through, turning the key. Karen, he nodded, pulled up around 10:30, walked the lot like she was inspecting a military. Base took some pictures of the signs. The boot lock your car. The whole strip then peeled out like her tires were mad at the pavement. I chuckled, but inside I was wary. Karen didn't strike me as the type to go down without one last swing. The next few days were oddly quiet. No angry notes, no phone calls, no sudden HOA appearances. The calm almost felt like a setup until Friday afternoon. I was restocking the register when Marco burst through the front door, nearly dropping his camera bag. "You need to come out front right now," heart pounding. I followed him onto the sidewalk where a gathering had formed near the front of the lot. Neighbors, customers, a few teens with phones out, filming everything, and in the center of it all stood Karen Her. Suit was crisp, her hair tied back so tightly it looked like it was holding in rage, and in her hand was a microphone connected to a portable speaker system set atop her Lexus. "Citizens of this community," she began, voice trembling with manufactured composure. "We have allowed certain elements to challenge the authority and harmony of our neighborhood, but no more." A collective groan rippled through the crowd. "This parking lot has been misrepresented in online publications that do not reflect the legal realities of community space and public right-of-way." I stepped forward, palms raised to my sides. "Karen, what are you doing?" She pointed the mic at me like it was a weapon. "You do not own this lot. You may have a piece of paper, but I have the support of our HOA, and we will not be intimidated." Someone in the crowd snorted. "You booted his car on his own land, lady." Karen ignored the comment and continued her monologue, twisting facts like balloon animals. That's when a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot and outstepped Warren, the HOA president, followed by 2 other board members and 1 man I didn't recognize, but who carried himself like the room belonged to him. The crowd parted as they approached. Karen clearly didn't expect them. "Karen," Warren said quietly, "you need to stop this." She turned eyes wide. "We cannot allow this kind of lawlessness to prevail. This is our neighborhood. We must protect it." The unknown man stepped forward, holding out a folder. "My name is Daniel Graves. I'm a municipal zoning officer here on behalf of the county. We've received multiple complaints and requests for review based on recent events." Karen's mouth opened, but no sound came out. This property was thoroughly surveyed, and the deed reviewed by our legal team. It is privately owned by Mr. Langford and designated commercial use under Section B of District Zoning Code 314A. Daniel flipped to a highlighted page and held it up. "This includes the entirety of the adjacent parking lot, curb to curb, and any action taken on this land without permission from the owner constitutes trespassing and unlawful interference with commerce." Someone gasped a sharp sound that cut through the dead silence. Karen reached for the mic key. "Again?" But Warren stepped in front of her, gently lowering it. "You've embarrassed the board, the neighborhood, and yourself. This ends now." A camera flash went off. Someone had snapped a photo at the exact moment her expression crumbled, and the timing could not have been more perfect. I stepped up to Daniel, extending a hand which he shook firmly. "Thank you for clearing this up." "Just doing my job," he said with a small grin, "but I'd advise installing some proper signage. Make it loud and clear. Going forward, I plan to—" As the crowd dispersed, the teens cheering and high-fiving each other, Karen stood frozen in place, staring at the pavement like it had betrayed her. Then she walked slowly to her car, opened the door, and drove away, without another word. She never returned to the lot, not the next week, not the week after. The HOA issued an official statement disavowing her actions and removing her from any volunteer leadership positions, effective immediately. They included an apology signed by all board members, except her. I printed it and framed it. Hung it right beside the register. Tony brought donuts that morning, said it was for the grand reopening of Sanity. Marco uploaded a final video titled Karen's Last Stand, and it hit 100,000 views in 3 days. People from neighboring towns came by just to park in my lot and take selfies beside the newly installed sign, "Private property owned and maintained by Langford Retail Holdings," and just beneath it, in smaller letters, violators. Will be booted for real this time. I started sleeping better, not because Karen was gone, but because I had stood up for something that mattered. My name, my business, my ground, and when people asked if the story was true, I'd smile and say, "Want to see the deed," because nothing beats the look on a Karen's face when she learns that the lot she tried to rule doesn't even belong to her. It never did, and it never will.